This is a very memorable story. This story takes place May 14th, 2023. This was my first solo camping trip and my first road trip by myself. So it was really special to me, and this is something I feel like I've been waiting my entire life to experience. I've always gone on road trips every year with my family, but never by myself, and I was gonna go and drive 500 miles and go camping at this place that me and my family always go camping at. And ever since I was really young, I always dreamed about driving all the way over there by myself and camping by myself. So this was it. I was set. I had everything packed up. I had all my snacks packed up. I had all the camping stuff and the tents packed up. So I was set. I was ready. And of course, I've got some joints rolled up and I've got some RSO capsules as well. And I also bought myself a little pod, a little live rosin pod. I was real serious about this road trip, and I had everything packed and organized, and about 9 a.m. I leave, and I start driving out of town. I get on the highway, and I was honestly really nervous about driving on the highway, because I hadn't really driven on the highway much before this. Like, I had my license, and I practiced driving for years before this, but every time I got on the highway, I was really nervous, but eventually it became very soothing, and I had a few playlists I had been making for years before, because I knew this solo road trip would be very important and memorable to me. So I'm driving down the road, I'm vibing, and hours go by, it's the end of the day now, and I was tired of driving, so I pull into a town, and I check into a hotel, and it's about 5 p.m. And that day I drove 240 miles, so I was just so tired. I didn't feel like going to a restaurant to eat, so I just stayed in my hotel and watched YouTube, and eventually, I took 50 milligrams of RSO, and as I said earlier, I was all set. I had all my favorite snacks packed, and I ate some Cheez-Its and peanut butter and some grapes and chips, and about 9 p.m., I'm getting ready to go to sleep. And I barely got any sleep because the walls are paper thin, and it was Friday night, so everybody was coming back from the bars, and people were drunk and loud, and I could literally hear everyone's conversations all night, and people were coming home until 3 a.m. And I just kept waking up, so I only had about 4.5 hours of sleep. And I'm feeling sick from barely sleeping and eating horribly. I drink some cold water and a little bit of Gatorade, and I'm like, okay, I'll take a cold shower. So I get in, and it's just disgusting, so that wasn't happening. So I just pour some cold water on my face from the sink, and I'm wondering what to do. My stomach hurt because I had barely really eaten anything good the day before, and I also felt nauseous because I barely slept. And I knew I needed to eat something hot. I felt like I needed to eat some warm, greasy food. And I needed to go to Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A was like a mile away. But it was super foggy and it was lightly raining, so I could barely see. Like, I don't know how I even made it to Chick-fil-A, but it's about 6:05 a.m. and I make it to Chick-fil-A. And I got a sausage, egg, and cheese sandwich. And I just felt so sick. I only ate like half of it and threw the rest away. Then I get back to the hotel, I pack up, and I check out, and I'm on the road by 9 a.m. And by then the fog and rain had cleared up, and there was still a little bit of dark clouds in the distance, but it was really beautiful, and the way the sun was shining through them, it just felt so scenic, like it was a video game or something. It was just a perfect morning to drive, and about an hour later I'm driving through the foothills of the mountains, and it was nice, but then it started getting difficult because eventually I started driving deeper into the mountains and it started getting curvy and steep, and it was still a highway, so people were driving like 65 miles an hour. And I wasn't used to driving on roads like that. I had never driven anywhere near hills or mountains before. And on top of that, there were so many semi-trucks and they were making me nervous. And there was also a lot of people on the road. And on top of that, there was construction. At one point, everybody was driving 60, 65 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden, around the curve of a hill, there would be a big congestion of stop-and-go traffic, and everybody would have to slam on their brakes because there was some crazy construction. And there was a couple of times where I had to slam on my brakes around the curve of a hill, and I didn't think that I was gonna live. Like, one time, I stopped just in time, and another time, there was a semi-truck right behind me, and I slammed on my brakes, and I didn't think that they had time to slam on their brakes. I thought I was about to get crushed, but luckily I didn't, and luckily I had gotten off of that crazy highway, and I was in this nice peaceful farmland road, and that was the final stretch before I got to the campground. And around 4 p.m. I get to the campground, and I got a nice scenic campsite. It was right next to the stream, and I start setting up the tent, and I immediately get into my bathing suit and jump into the stream. It was so refreshing, and it was a little cold, but it made me feel really good. I really needed it after driving for like 9 hours. And at this point, it's about 6 p.m., and I had planned on smoking a joint on the nature trail. This is something I've been looking forward to doing because there's no other smoke spot on planet Earth that's better than this nature trail. I already had my joints rolled up, so I go into my bag and I take one out and I spark it up. I only smoked about half of this joint and I was already so high. I was really vibing. I was listening to some good music, and the smoke spot in the mountains was just the perfect place. I finished up my little smoke sesh and I still had plenty of daylight left, so I took a quick walk down the street to the abandoned cabins, and they weren't really abandoned. They were open for the public to walk around in, and they weren't falling apart. They were being restored. They were like a historical preserve or something. It was just a cool place to walk around. But I get back to my campsite, I eat something, and then I just lay in my tent and listen to the stream. It was the most relaxing thing ever, and eventually I had just fallen asleep, and I woke up the next morning and I slept good. I was feeling good the next day. I woke up around 6 a.m. and I had some breakfast. I had some yogurt and a peanut butter sandwich, and then I got ready for the day. And a little while later, around 9:30, I head out to this historic nature park. It was about 10 miles away, but it was through the windy mountain roads, and you had to go real slow, so it took about 45 minutes, but the drive there was worth it. It was so beautiful, and eventually I get to the historic nature park. I'm walking around, I'm checking out the old mill, I'm checking out the little cabins. It's a cool little spot. I'm walking all around, I walk into the shops, I'm eating some good snacks, and then I'm walking on this nature walk. And it was such a peaceful vibe. I was hitting my live rosin pod, I got some good music going. The weather was just absolutely perfect, and I was enjoying my nice little nature walk. I was walking down this little creek, and I remember I just felt like I was in Skyrim. I was seeing some butterflies and some bumblebees, and then the mountains in the background just made it the most picturesque setting. I really enjoyed being there, definitely in my top 5 best experiences of my life, and I really tried to soak it all in, but unfortunately I had to leave. And the ride back felt a little bit shorter. I got back around 3 or 4 p.m. and I was tired. I had just enough energy to walk to the nature trail that was by the campground and smoke. I had quite the day, so I was chilling at the campsite for a few hours before I went to sleep, and then I settled in my tent. I was real comfy. It was about 60 degrees at night, so I was really hunkered down in my sleeping bag. It was literally the most perfect days of my entire life. And the next days were even better. The next day I wanted to go swimming, and there was this place up the road from the campsite where the water was deep enough to swim in. And my family had taken me to this campground since I was younger, and I would always see other people swimming in this spot. But for some reason, all those years, we just never went. But on this vacation, I did, and I soon found out it was the perfect spot. I get out of my car, I start walking towards the water, and I see that there's this little spot kinda hidden, maybe 50 feet away. Whenever I go hiking or go on a nature walk, I can kinda tell where other stoners had gone off the path to smoke. And this is one of those spots. It was just perfect. It was right by the stream, and I could see if anybody was gonna park and come down. I get my joint out, and I remember I was smoking on some cherry punch, a real nice relaxing hybrid. And I finished up smoking, and I remember I was really chilling, and then the munchies hit, and right before I had left for my journey for the day, I had gone to the camp store, and I had gotten a strawberry shortcake ice cream bar. I was literally in heaven. Like, when I think about what would make me the happiest in the world, I just immediately think about being at this campground, sitting by the stream, and eating some kind of sweet snack while smoking on some gas. I finish my ice cream, and then I get ready to go swim, and I'm walking back to the trail, I'm walking back to my car, I'm putting a few things away, and then I turn around and I sit on this rock, and I'm just trying to take in the beauty of where I am. I'm checking out the water, I'm trying to see the best spot to get in, and as I'm sitting there, I see this snake, and it was just swimming, it was moving pretty quick, and it was trying to get to the other side. And I didn't really think anything of it. It kind of freaked me out for a second, but it was moving fast, and it had places to be, and a few moments later, I see this log, and there's 2 other snakes on the log, so there was literally 3 snakes within 5 minutes of each other, and I eventually decided to go back to the campground. I changed into my hiking clothes, and for the rest of the day, I had gone on my usual hike in the woods, and I spent quite a while just smoking and listening to music, and really soaking in being in the forest, and I was listening to some real funk. I was listening to Kinayata and DJ Smokey and some Metro Zoo, and I was also listening to a lot of jazzy type Bones music. If you know this kind of music was perfect to get stoned in the woods and listen to, and it was also the perfect chill music to fall asleep to. And by the time I had laid down in my tent to go to sleep, I was so high I felt like I was flying away. I don't know if it was my tolerance or what it was, but something about being in the forest had made me feel a lot higher than I normally would get. The next day I had gone to the swimming spot, and luckily there weren't any snakes this time, and I was able to have my nice time at the stream. I had spent all day just chilling at this spot. I was going back and forth from smoking and swimming and just chilling, basking in nature and listening to music. And eventually by the late afternoon the weather started changing up. So I decided to leave, and it was already really cloudy, and eventually it started raining a little bit, and I didn't want to just sit in my tent. I had put my poncho on, and I had gone to the trail. I had gotten all my weed stuff together, and I was ready to smoke, and I did exactly that. It was a real vibe. Some people hate the rain, but whenever people talk about the rain, I try to think of this forest, because when it rained, it was just so beautiful and so peaceful. I really enjoyed my little rainy trail sesh, but around 5 p.m. it started thundering and lightning, so I headed back to my tent, and I had a couple RSO capsules because I didn't think I was ever going to get a break to go back out. And I didn't. It had rained all night, so I just laid down in the tent and listened to music on my phone. And a few hours later, I'm getting ready to go to bed, and it just started storming so bad, so I decided to just sleep in my car. And I actually slept good. The next morning I felt really refreshed, and that was good because the next day I was driving home. And I woke up around 6:30. I tried to savor the last couple of hours. And then I check out, and I'm on the road by 10:30. And ever since I had woken up, I had this intense craving for Chick-fil-A. I was done eating peanut butter sandwiches and granola bars. At this point, I was still driving through the middle of nowhere, but I had it mapped out of where the first available Chick-fil-A was, and a little while later, I arrive, and I get myself a 6-piece chicken tender. I went feral. I devoured them in about 60 seconds, and I felt like a beast inside of me was tamed. This had really hit the spot more than the first Chick-fil-A that I had. This is exactly what I needed for my 12-hour drive. I did not want to spend another night at a hotel. I wanted to get home that night. I had become so comfortable with driving that I was driving in the fast lane the entire time back home, mainly just to avoid the trucks, and people driving in the fast lane were a lot more predictable. And I was driving so fast within the speed limit that people were starting to get out of the way and move into the other lane because I had places to be. I needed to get home. I don't know what it was, but I just wanted to be back home. And I finally make it home around 9:30 p.m. and I was just so happy with myself that I had completed that entire trip. Like, that was a really big achievement to me. I was really proud of myself, and I remember coming home, and I remember my mom gave me a big hug, and it just made me feel really good about myself. But yeah, this is the end of today's memorable story. It's quite a long one. I hope you guys stayed through the entire thing. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.